Hello everybody, Samantha White here, and welcome to my Zero Waste Kitchen. Today I am going to be showing you how I make dinner rolls. So I figured we'd make some bread today just because it's Sunday and I'm really craving some bread with butter and jam on it. So since I'm making it anyway, I thought I would bring you guys along because I post this on Instagram a lot when I make bread, and I always get people asking me what the recipe is and how I do it, and I thought it would just be easier if I could just put the recipe all in one place so that everyone can just come and find the recipe here, and if they want, they can see a step-by-step for how I actually make the bread. So before we get started, we need some ingredients. Yeast, sugar, flour, salt. This is all refilled from bulk. And then I have cream and butter and hot water. Now, the cream and the butter, some people don't want to use, and that's totally fine. If you don't want to use cream and butter, I have substituted the cream. I think the actual recipe calls for milk. But if you don't want to use cream, you can definitely use whatever type of nut milk you want. And then if you don't want to use butter, I've used coconut oil with really good results. Then you're also going to need some measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a big mixing bowl, a small mixing bowl, and a spatula. And the recipe, so recipe book. And finally, you will need a pan. The recipe calls for an 8x8 pan. I do not own an 8x8 pan, so I'm using this, which is somewhere in between an 8x8 and a 9x13. Use what you like. So now that we have our ingredients and all of the tools that we need, we're going to combine the dry ingredients together first. So that is 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 1/4 teaspoon rapid rise yeast, 2 tablespoons sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon salt. Ooh, I was cutting it close on sugar today. I might be cutting it a little too close on sugar. Guys, oops. So now that our dry ingredients are all mixed together and combined, we can work on the wet ingredients. So the wet ingredients officially in the recipe book that my mom uses is a 1/2 cup milk, a 1/4 cup water, and 2 tablespoons of butter. So what I do, because I use cream instead of milk, is I use a 1/4 cup cream and a 1/2 cup water. So I just switch those measurements around because the cream is a lot thicker and has a lot more fat in it, and I find that it works just decent. Got it? Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. I have hot water here. Well, it's warm. You can see I'm grabbing it. It's not super hot. I'm going to take a 1/2 cup water and I'm going to put it into the small bowl I have going over here. And then I'm going to take a 1/4 cup cream. So a 1/4 cup cream going into the water. 2 tablespoons of butter or coconut oil. It really depends what I have on hand at the moment. And I kind of just guesstimate it. You could melt it down and actually pay attention to how much it is, but I just sort of, guess. So I put it all in this little bowl, and if your water's real nice and hot, it should be hot enough to sort of melt your butter down. If it's not though, you can stick it in the microwave for a couple of minutes or in a saucepan on your stove for a couple of minutes and just warm it up. You don't want your water to be too hot. If it's too hot, it's gonna kill the yeast and nothing's gonna work. But if it's too cold, the yeast isn't gonna activate and make your bread rise either. So it needs to be nice and warm. I think it's oh, my mom's written it in here, about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I'm going to just add the liquid ingredients into the dry ingredients we already have in here. Now again, the actual recipe calls for me to beat this for 2 minutes with a spatula. I don't do a full 2 minutes. Basically, I mix it together. Maybe I do a minute of mixing. Okay, so I've let my dough mixture sort of chill out while I put away all the other ingredients. Now I'm gonna add the rest of my flour. So we put in 3/4 cup flour in the beginning, but the total amount of flour you're gonna want is about 2 cups. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the remaining 1.25 cups, about a 1/2 cup at a time. So I'll add 1/2 cup, a second 1/2 cup, and then a 1/4 cup. So towards the end, I've added in my full cup. I still have a 1/4 cup to go theoretically, but towards the end, I find that sometimes it's just easier to knead in the remaining flour and because it starts to really just get sort of doughy. Okay, so I've combined everything together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm gonna move this over a little bit, and on this clean counter space that I have, I'm gonna put my dough along with whatever leftover flour is there. Put that on top of measuring cups. And I'm gonna knead my dough. So this calls for it to be, let's see, I think it's 8 to 10 minutes. It says it needs kneaded. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't do that. I knead it probably like 3 to 5, maybe. All right, so I'm done kneading it currently. And I probably only did it like 2 or 3 minutes actually, now that I sort of timed it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this bowl again that I had it in before. I'm gonna place it in there. I'm gonna grab a towel, sort of let it rest for 10 minutes. Okay, so this has been sitting and resting for 10 minutes. I'm gonna take the towel off and grab this pan. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna shape this beautiful, beautiful dough into like 9 to 12 dough balls is the goal here. God, this dough is so pretty. So the recipe says 9 to 12 dough balls. I usually end up with 8 because I always forget that I need to split it into thirds first so that I could have 9. So I just end up with 8 and it's fine. So now we're going to oil our pan. Now you could use some of the butter that we had used earlier, which I do a lot, but most of the time I just grab my sunflower oil and I find that it's easy to sort of pour a tiny bit in and then use your hand to push it into all the corners and everything. A little trick my mom taught me, so this recipe book has like little tips on the bottom of it, and the tip on the bottom of this particular page said, tip, use disposable gloves when kneading dough so it doesn't stick to your hands so that cleanup is a breeze. My mom, when she wrote this recipe, because she did write this recipe for me, when she wrote the recipe, she went in and crossed that out and said, tip, leave oil on your hands from greasing the pan so that dough doesn't stick to your hands and cleanup is a breeze. So a little tip I do sometimes before I start dealing with the dough. This time I didn't because the dough isn't, it's like perfect today. It's not that sticky. But if it's a little sticky, I'll put a little oil on my hands and then my dough doesn't stick to my hands. All right, so we have our 8 dough balls. What we're gonna do is we're gonna shape them and place them in the pan. So I'm gonna just take my dough balls and sort of pull them around so that the top is like beautiful and smooth and the bottom is sort of pinched and not smooth because we don't care what that looks like. But the top is beautiful. And then I usually rub the top in some oil and place it in the pan. Ta-da! Oh, no. Okay, we have our 8 pieces of dough. I'm tired of saying balls. We have our 8 pieces of dough in an oiled pan or a greased pan. So what we're going to do now is we're gonna put this, I'm gonna cover it up again with my handy dandy towel, and we're going to put it somewhere warm. So I'm gonna start preheating my oven right now. It needs to be preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is Celsius something. But it's 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm gonna turn my oven on and I'm gonna place this at the back of my stove. So not right at the back because that's where all the excess heat comes out, but close to the back of my stove so that they're warm, so that they'll raise, because you're gonna let them sit for 30 minutes and they should double in size. So you basically just let them sit until they've doubled in size. Ooh, we're gonna move the massive amounts of cast iron that was sitting there first. We'll come back in a half hour. All right, so it's been a half hour of these guys sitting on top of my stove, getting all warm and lovely, and I would say they've about doubled in size. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna throw them in the oven. Nope. I'm gonna place them nicely in the oven. Let's try that. Why did I put my recipe book away? Put them in the oven for 20 minutes. Guys, they're done. Oh. hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. And I hope to see you all again soon. Have a great day. Bye. Oh, also, I'll post a link to this. I'll post a link to this recipe in the description box below. So if you'd like to see the actual recipe with my sort of like notes on how I do things, check that out. Because it's probably going to be easier than you watching a ridiculously long video every time you want to make bread. Am I right? I'm right. Yeah.